We begin with the official opposition, MPP Marit Stiles. Please proceed. Is it working? Okay, don't start the clock. The clock hasn't started yet.
All right, here we go. I was unmuted.
Clock starts.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and it's a pleasure to be here this morning. Thank you to the Solicitor General for her presentation. I have a number of questions. I'm going to start with a couple related to schools and school reopening and the government's back to school plans. Minister, last year, schools were closed in Ontario longer than any other jurisdiction in Canada, one of the worst records in the world. This disruption caused a lot of pain for kids, for families, for education workers. And instead of making the kind of urgent investments that I think people expect by this government to keep our schools safely open, the government's cutting $800 million from education this year, according to the Financial Accountability Office. Minister, you announced, or the government announced, some plans just recently. I mean, here we are, less than 3 weeks away from school reopening, and boards have just learned about what the plans are for vaccination clinics for students or at or near schools. We know that experts have said that mandatory vaccination of teachers and education workers is one of the most important things we can do to protect the school year, especially given that children under 12 are ineligible to be vaccinated. Your government has announced what you're calling vaccine disclosure as your policy. But with less than 3 weeks to go, I got to tell you, I am hearing from school boards who are telling us they are scrambling to administer that, to figure out how to administer that without any guidance or support from your government. I'm wondering, I have a few questions related to this. One, why has your government only announced a vaccine disclosure instead of making vaccination mandatory? How many clinics are going to be established? Will they be in every school? And finally, when vaccines are approved for under 12s, when that eventually does happen, what plan does your government have in place to vaccinate those students? How long is it going to take? And are we going to ensure that that vaccination as well is immediately available through schools?
Well, thank you very much. There's a lot of things to unpack, but frankly, our government has been doing a lot with Minister Lecce on the education front as we prepare for students returning to schools in September. The health and safety of our students and staff has always been our #1 priority. We've taken a balanced approach to reopening schools to maximize health and safety and ensure that schools remain open to in-person learning for the full school year. We want our students to go to school and stay in school. And so specifically, under Premier Ford, our government is investing in public education more than any government in Ontario's history for the 3rd straight year. Under our plan, we are making over $2 billion in additional resources available so that we continue to keep students and staff safe, including $1.6 billion in COVID-19 resources, $85.5 million plan to support learning recovery in math and reading, and $561 million increase in the grants to student needs, rising to $25.6 billion. As a result of our government's investment since the onset of the pandemic, all schools across Ontario are reporting that they have implemented a range of measures to improve ventilation and air quality. Because our government knows that these are challenging times, we've provided Ontario families with $1.8 billion in direct financial support. As well, we've made unprecedented investments of over $80 million to enhance capacity and support student mental health for the 2021-22 school year. I think that our actions have proven that when we invest in our schools, we ensure that they will be safe, and our students, particularly, frankly, the students under the age of 12 who have yet to have access to vaccines because they have not been approved by Health Canada, we are doing everything we can do within our power to reopen schools safely in September. Thank you.
Minister, thank you. Minister, thank you. I would differ with you on a number of those points. Obviously, having talked to many school boards over the last, certainly through the summer, but even in just the last couple of days, it's pretty clear that school boards are scrambling to figure out how to go beyond what your government is funding. I mean, the truth is that, we aren't. They're scrambling to see if they can keep those classrooms smaller because they know that it's going to be a concern, and that it's going to put students at risk, and that we can't afford another year of reopening and then closing and then reopening and then closing. I also want to talk to you about, you talked about some of the ventilation issues, and I know your government has said that all school boards are going to be implementing alternative measures, like HEPA filters in all classrooms that have without mechanical ventilation. Now, I will say there are many experts out there saying that's not really good enough anyways. And I don't know why it is that Ontario students can't expect the same standards that, say, students in New York can expect. It's very unfortunate. We have come across now 18 school boards who say ventilation upgrades funded by the federal government would not be fully complete by September. A lot of that is due to material shortages, to delays, to a lack of support from the provincial government. Engineer David Elfstrom, who I'm sure you're familiar with, and I wish your government was listening to, has noted that the government plan lacks a lot of the specific target metrics that you need to work toward. I want to ask you a few things. One is, can the government confirm that 18 boards will not have air filtration in place come September? And how many students does that mean will be impacted? The NDP has called for classroom by classroom inspections to ensure that all classrooms meet air quality targets. This is essential. This is also needs to be reported publicly. There needs to be transparency. Will your government commit to that? Will there be classroom by classroom inspections? And what and how is that going to be reported, Minister?
So I think it's important to remind the member that both the Chief Medical Officer of Health as well as Minister Lecce and our government have always said that our goal is to ensure that students within our classrooms can safely return. We are doing that with the investments. And again, I will remind you, $1.6 billion in COVID-19 resources, $85.5 million planned to support learning recovery in math and reading, because we understand that online learning for some students was particularly challenging in the math and reading subjects. And $561 million increase to the grants for student needs, rising to $25.6 billion. As a result of our government's investment, we have ensured and continue to work with our school boards, with our federations, with our parents to make sure that children can safely return to the classroom. But we're not going to do this recklessly, and we're not going to do it in a way that impacts children's ability to return to the classroom, to safely participate in their education career pathway with their peers.
Minister,
we will continue to do that. And I think it's really important that we work together
2 minutes.
to make sure that we have the resources in place, the school boards and the—
Minister, with respect, Minister, with respect.
What the reopening plan is, and we've made sure that that has happened through direct communication with Minister Lecce and the school board and the
Minister, with respect, what your government is doing, and we know this because of outside independent experts who are looking at your books and saying you're actually cutting $800 million from education funding this year. But with respect, the plan as it has been established, and we're hearing this from education experts and school boards, is actually a plan for another year of chaos. Because those investments are not actually, I mean, you can talk about these great big numbers, but we're not actually seeing the impact in classrooms. And you failed to answer many of my questions. I mean, you are here as the Premier's designate. We expect you to be able to answer these important questions, and so do the people of Ontario. I want to shift very quickly to another issue that's of great concern in my riding and many, many other parts of the province. Small businesses who have tried to protect patrons and staff by asking about vaccine status are being targeted by anti-vaccine protesters, online, in person. I know you're aware of this. Your government appears to have abandoned any kind of leadership role with respect to vaccine certificates, and you're leaving it up to those individual small businesses to come up with their own systems. You know, small businesses have already been through so much, and now they're worried they're going to be shut down again because of this new wave. and potential restrictions, why will your government not bring in a vaccine certificate to help all of those small businesses stay safe and open, and to help so many others across sectors in our communities?
So
Sorry,
I'm not
we're out of time. We're now going to the government side, beginning with MPP Robin Martin.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much, Minister, for coming here and